Hi, this is Kiran Manral. I'm back with another episode of Chasing Creativity, and today I have the very lovely Sanghmitra Hitaishi with us. And Sangamitra is here to talk about her very unconventional journey from learning dance to being an actor in films to writing her own stuff to doing all sorts of wonderful things, and also a podcast that she's coming up with. All this and more on this episode of Chasing Creativity. Welcome, Sangamitra.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And I've been curious since I read up that little bit about you on the internet, and that's all I could find.
Yeah.
Apart from your work and what you've done, but about you. All I know is that you were born in Purvanchal.
Yeah.
You grew up for a bit there, you lived for a bit there, and then you went to Kalakshetra. It was a very unconventional choice of education. So how
Yeah.
did that happen? How did that come about?
My mother studied in Banaras Hindu University, and she wanted to learn Bharatnatyam, but unfortunately, we came from a very conservative family in Eastern UP, which is what I call the Wild West of India, where you hear stories from Purvanchal, and you're like, oh my God. So that's where she grew up, and she was quite intelligent for her time. And she couldn't pursue Bharatnatyam, which she was learning in Banaras Hindu University. And she got married by the time she was 19 years old. And so she always had this in her mind that if she had a daughter, she would make her learn Bharatnatyam.
Okay.
And her teacher in BHU had studied in Kalakshetra. And he told her that, why don't you send her there? And when you're 10 years old is the right time for a kid to start learning the dance form. So I was sent there.
Did she face any resistance? Because to send a girl away so far to the other end of the country,
Yeah.
and that too to learn Bharatnatyam, not proper school, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know that concept that you do your boards and 10th and whatever and all your subjects. So what did she face any resistance from the family?
I think so. We were a neutral family, and my brother was sent to a boarding school a year before me, and I sat and cried. Why was I not sent away? Of course, because families are difficult to be with. So I was like, why is he getting the escape and I'm not? So then then she was like, okay, if you want to go, then we send you there. Not really. She didn't face any resistance. I think she also was quite ambitious as a person. So she was like, okay, if children are in a hostel, then I could pursue my own ambitions. I think it was the best decision on her part to whatever her reasons were. I don't really know exactly what her reasons were, but it was one of the best things she did for me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Had you shown an interest in dance or in music before that? Were you
inclined? I was a loner always as a child, like a misfit always, and I had difficulty making friends, or maybe just people found it difficult to be friends with me. I don't know, whatever the case. So, and then I would watch films all the time, and I would be singing and dancing. So she's like, okay, fine. And I also, because she had that her own thing that I want my daughter to learn Bharatnatyam. She was quite culturally inclined, even though she herself never had exposure to any form of like in the north of India, the only cultural outputs you have is either a Bollywood film that you go watch in a theater, or weddings, right?
Okay.
Where you sing your sohars, which is those folk songs. That's about it. So I think she was, and I think she also had this inner dream of becoming a playback singer, and she couldn't fulfill it. So vicariously through me, she tried maybe living her own, dreams.
When you went to Kalakshetra, you were 10 years old?
Yeah.
That was very young.
Yeah.
And it was a completely different experience.
Oh, yes.
It's a Gurukul system,
Yeah.
and you do your own stuff, and you clean up after yourself,
Yes.
and you make your own bedding.
Yeah.
How did you cope?
I remember, so North Indian, going to the South, I did not speak English. I did not speak Tamil. And yeah, it was just literally being thrown into something where I had to learn the language, both the languages, quite quickly. And I remember feeling way more isolated when I was there in the first year. And I think in the South, there is always this skepticism that North Indians are looked at with. I can't place what it is, but maybe because they're also proud culture. You know, they're thousands of years old, and their language is so old and rich. And then they're like, these North Indians or whatever. So I think it was difficult. I remember spending a lot of time reading in the library because there were English books, and I started reading. I knew a little bit English. Nobody spoke English at home, but I had studied in an English medium until the age of 10. So books were quite a savior for me. They saved me.
From Kalakshetra to the movies, how did that jump happen?
In Kalakshetra, I was learning Bharatnatyam, and we also had like CBSE school, like where from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, you would go to your normal school, and then from 5 in the evening to until 8 in the evening, you had to learn like, Bharatnatyam or violin or Carnatic music, whichever you had chosen. And so Bharatnatyam is a dance drama, and it was a fine art school. So when you're 10 years old, you are growing up around people who are only talking about music and dance, and you have all these like top filmmakers and actresses descending in Kalakshetra. Every year they would have this 10-day festival, and it was like a festival. It was like Diwali of arts. And I think that made me, even though I didn't come from an art family, there was no artist in my family, something like, okay, this is also a world. And because I was growing up there, it became like, okay, this is like a way of life. So it wasn't something that you did out of the blue. That, and Bharatnatyam is a dance drama. So it's not only dance, but there's also a lot of like expressions and story being told. So being on stage also felt like, okay, this is something that people do and you can make a career in it. I remember telling my parents, and they were like, because in my home, there was a dichotomy because I was studying in a fine art school, but when I would come home, they would say things like, पर ये तो फिल्मों में होता है, which is like film Bombay or film Chand pe hai somewhere. Like this is not something that happens in real world. These are things that happen in another planet. And I really used to think that Bombay was like another planet, because in movies you saw Bombay as this. There were perfect coffee shops, and the roads were great because they would go shoot in Hong Kong or wherever. And I really thought that's how Bombay was. I think my real glimpse of Bombay was through Basu Bhattacharya and Basu Chatterjee's films, where, like, what was that? Those films of Sharmila Tagore and Dharmendra. Chupke Chupke, where you see, old Bombay buildings, and Deepti Naval films. And I was like, okay, this is Bombay. But I didn't expect Andheri to be Bombay,
Reality was quite shocking.
Yeah. So, and I don't remember the first time I had the thought that I want to be an actor. I always knew I wanted to be in the films.
Yeah?
Yeah, always. Like, I don't have the first one. Okay, that's when I realized I want to be an actor. I think also because as a loner and as someone who did not have a lot of like social life, even when I was young, films were something that's where I got a lot of my education from as well. Like, oh, this is how human beings behave. Okay, so when someone is angry with you, you can make a very nuanced choice of still forgiving them and not fighting back, because people in real life were responding from first emotions, like if someone was angry, you would hang up the phone. But in films, people were making more empathic choices. Like if someone was angry, you would listen to them, even if it was making you angry. So I liked how in films, characters would make decisions and choices that were in a way breaking the norm of what was being taught to me.
That's lovely. I like this dichotomy that you mentioned about being a loner and then to be a performer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of vulnerability to being a
Yeah. Yeah.
performer.
Yeah.
And as a loner, you tend to isolate yourself,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
tend to go into yourself.
Yeah.
How have you coped with that? How have you tackled that?
Uh, I'm still awkward around. Like, I think it was some actor. I don't remember who it was who said, "Acting is a shy man's revenge."
Lovely.
Because you get to hide behind a character. You get to develop the psychology of a character the way you want to. I mean, keeping, of course, the sociological factor in mind and the history, and if it's a real character, and if it's a character from a certain caste, you keep all of those elements in mind. But you create this human being the way you want to, and you can hide behind this person. So, like, for example, when I meet photographers and they want to take pictures, I'm so awkward. But the moment there's a video camera and I have a character that I've worked on, it's just so much more easier. So,
Have you
yeah.
ever felt tempted to create a persona for your shoots? That you slip into character while doing your shoots?
You mean when
Your stills, when you meet a photographer.
I do think of a story. There is a story in my head. Like, I will start using external elements of, okay, what am I wearing? Okay, who this person would be. Like, if I'm wearing a sari, then I would want to go into the mindset of a girl from like Rajni Gandha. You remember that film?
Yes, of
So when
course.
I wear sari, I go into that space.
Okay.
Like, I will start thinking like her, and I will behave like a girl from a woman from early 80s, and the simpler woman, the softer woman. And if I'm wearing blazer, then I'll go into the boss mode. And I'll be like, okay, if this woman was like a owner of a multinational company, and so I do create personas. Maybe they don't have names, but yes, there is a story behind it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
In 2015, you were selected for the Berlinale.
Yeah.
How did that happen and what was the experience like?
So when I first came to Bombay, I had never heard of FTI. I wanted to be an actor, and I eloped from home. I eloped. And because nobody really took me seriously, and I really wanted to do this, so I did some work in Delhi, and then I saved some money, and then I came here, and without knowing anything. And then, while I was here doing my things, a year later, I get a call from someone that I'd met who was a director in FTI, who was making his diploma film. And he said, "There's this diploma film, and I want you to act in it." And I was like, yeah, I would love to act. And they were shooting it on film, which was already something that people didn't know. You were mostly shooting on digital, and shooting for film is a completely different. What do you call? You go with a completely different way of behaving, because film is expensive. You don't get your retakes, and so you have to rehearse. So I was very excited about shooting 35 and that film was seen by another FTI director who was making a feature, which then he saw that film and said, okay, I want to meet this girl. And then I got that part. That was my first feature film as a leading person. And that went to Berlin Film Festival. And that took me to Berlin Film Festival and got really nice, reception there. And I remember walking the red carpet with Ralph Fiennes, the guy who plays Voldemort, and I love these. For me, it was like, oh my god, this is why I became an actor. I felt so belonged. For the misfit felt belonged. And then they had a mentorship program for young actors, filmmakers, directors, producers, where they would call you to Berlin. Berlin Film Festival had this mentorship program that ran simultaneously, where they would call you from your countries, they would select you, and they would pay for your trip, and they would pay for your stay, and they would get you mentored with people like Meryl Streep and things like that.
Wonderful.
And the year I was there, the director Darren Aronofsky was who made The Prestige, I think. No, that was Nolan. I don't know. Black Swan and films like that. And so I had applied for it, and luck is not something that I'm not a very lucky person. Yeah, I through certain things I've realized in life that, okay, Like, for example, in college, and I'll come back to the story. In college, if you gave a paper and you didn't get the marks that you wanted, somewhere in the middle of your next year, in your second year, you could give the exam from the first year. And if you, either the marks would increase or they would remain the same. You would never go below that, right? So you could retry to get more marks. And I would give those papers, and all my friends from my group or from my class would have 1 mark increased or 3 marks. I would remain the same. I was like, oh my God. And that was always the case. So I applied for this thing, and I got it, and I couldn't believe it. And I was the first female actress from India to be selected for the Berlinale Talents. There were only male actors before me that had gone. So I went there, and they said, I met the founder, and it was a he and a she, and she said that we saw your application, we remembered you from your previous film that was here last year, and we're like, we need to get this girl. And yeah, it was they mentored us. We were trained by acting trainers who train the top of Hollywood actors, and it opened a lot of doors for me in European films.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got a Spanish agent, and then I acted in a Spanish film, and I made a lot of European friends, and that's why I do a lot of work now in Europe as well. So yeah.
So you straddle both the worlds now.
Yeah, and I don't have any personal life because of it. But yes, I mean, it has given me a lot of exposure to art and culture and different ways of living. I mean, yes, I do. It's amazing. I can't even place what it is because I've just been living through it. But I know that I'm a so much different person post my first film in Berlin. Very different.
The experience of working across these cultures.
Yeah.
You're working in India, and it's a very different scene out here.
Yes, yeah.
And working there in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, even from the basic thing of how the script comes or the cast is planned,
yeah.
Everything is different. For you as an actor, what is the most difficult thing about, transitioning between these two places or these two worlds?
I think it's difficult, really. It's not difficult. In fact, it's different.
It's different. Okay.
It's different. Different in a way that, the stories here are my stories. Like, in the sense, I don't have to get into the context of things. I come into a world, a character or a film is written. I come into that world and I know what the story is and I find it relatable. And if I'm being cast, then it's because they've gone through all the nuances and like, okay, she is the perfect character for this, actor for this character. And so the stories are mine, but the set is very chaotic. Right, the way of functioning is a lot more like ho jayega, right? Which is how we are very jugadu people here. So we're like, matlab, abhi ek mahina hai na, 2 din pehle karenge, so everything is like last minute done. So there's a lot of chaos on sets. I mean, it's changing a lot now. I remember The Hard, which I worked on, was one of the most smoothest sets. But I give the credit of that to Tiger Baby and Excel, and because they've been doing it for so many years. And it was also a set run by women. Like the showrunner was a woman, Reema Kakti. The directors were women. The producer, the executive producer was, a woman, also a man, but woman. And Zoya, Tiger Baby, is a woman. 2 women run that company. So there was a lot of empathy and easiness on sets. But then there are also other sets that are more, chaotic. But in Europe, you don't have that freedom. Like, even what you're going to shoot is given to you 2 months before.
Okay.
Right? Everything is way planned ahead. Things are like, you only shoot 12 hours. You do not extend beyond 12 hours because they have strong unions and you are paid a certain amount. You can't be paid below that because that's decided by the union. So, then you realize that regulations matter. And that also trickles down to set behavior and respect. For example, one of the things that you don't see or see it in a very less capacities hierarchy on European sets. Like I was working on a film which had Emmy nominated actors, and really actors that I've worked with, Pedro Almodovar, and big actors from Argentina and Spain. And there was no spot boy to get you like a cup of coffee. There was a trailer, and they would have tea and sandwiches, and from the fifth AD to the top actor, they would all go there, and they would make their own tea, and they would get their own sandwiches and go to the trailer and eat it. And there was and makeup van. There's no like one makeup van for one person. You had a makeup trailer. You arrive on set on your call time, and you all sit there. So you have the top actor and the secondary actor or the tertiary actor who probably just has one scene sitting in the same trailer and getting their makeup done. And I think that gives you a sense of collaborative feeling. Here, you don't even get to, like, you could be working for 35 days with your co-actor, but apart from your scene together, you're probably not even hanging out together, and you go back into your vans, and it isn't more collective or community feeling, which is where art comes from. When you make something, you want to have like this community or a communion kind of feeling, and that happens a little less here. And also there's a lot of hierarchy here. Like food is different for light people, actors are eating different food, and I for me, that, like, I really struggle with that.
I like the fact that you mentioned this hierarchy.
Yeah.
And the fact that you could be working together with somebody for 35 days and never see them outside of your shot.
Yeah.
What does that do to the energy between the actors in a scene?
I mean,
you're a performer, you have to perform, but
I mean, I don't know for other people, but for me, I think it keeps you away from the depth of things, right? You could hit the character to the nail, and you could get your tone right, you could get the note right, and you could get the scene. Okay, this works. The director, like, yeah, this shot works for me, and it's perfect for the edit. But what about the process? Process of making art is equally important. Like, you don't, of course, you remember the film eventually 15 years later, your audience will watch. But as an artist, the journey of being on that set, you remember the memories of what you made when you were shooting that in that remote area. So I do believe that it leaves you feeling, it's like, two musicians on stage jamming, right? You go into this very profound depth which can't even be explained. You could get that, you could give a great performance, and the audience would get the value for their money, and they would enjoy and have the concert, and they'll go back and say it was a great concert. But what about your journey of being on that stage and hitting that note, but going a little beyond that note as well, So for me, I feel a little unfulfilled when that happens, because I want to go there and I want to create together. And hierarchy, in a way, is, at least, I mean, it may have worked when we lived in forests or jungle, and there had to be some sort of like structures for people to not go crazy and chop each other's head off, and there was a wiser one because they had access to knowledge. But today, everybody has access to knowledge, everybody has similar kind of lifestyle. So then I don't understand, why is hierarchy relevant today? I don't understand it.
But it continues,
and people who have risen from below then want to maintain the status quo, and I'm like, but shouldn't you be opening the doors and making it more equal for everybody else that follows? If you have gone through a pain, why would you want someone else to go through that pain? Wouldn't you want to change that once you have that power?
Perhaps not, because they want to have their time now.
Yeah, maybe. But that's sad, though.
You just spoke about the set of the hut.
Yeah.
Which is all female, I think, mostly female.
Mostly female, yeah.
Let's talk about your character in that.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
And how did you slip into that character? Did you identify with parts of her? Did you have to go into the depth, research her? How did you work on that character?
So,
Miriam was.
yeah, Miriam. Miriam is so different from me. Miriam is gullible. Miriam is very soft, and Miriam is this person who will fall in love with someone she meets on the internet. I'm not that. I mean, we also have some similarities, but I'm not gullible at all. In fact, there's a part of me that I'm a believer, but I'm a skeptic as well. So, and I would never fall in love with someone who on the internet if I've not met them in person. Like that would just not happen. So I had to find a way to. So when I get a character, and if she's very different from me, which is most of the times that's the case. Like I get a character, and I'll tell you more about that later. But this question, and so I was like, okay, what is a girl who's an orphan feels? What is the core emotion of a person like that? The feeling of abandonment.
Mhm.
Right? That the people who were supposed to love you didn't want you. Right? And for me, that was so moving. I was like, and I have had that feeling of abandonment. So that was my window into the character. The
Interesting.
feeling of abandonment. Now, someone who whose core feeling of existence is that I wasn't wanted, I am not worthy, and I will be abandoned, develops a people-pleasing attitude.
Mhm.
Like I'm just going to be nice with everyone, and I'm going to believe, even if like love shows up, I'll believe in the goodness, and I don't want to. It's also a form of denial, right? I don't want to look at the sad part, and this person. And Miriam is also an intelligent girl. Like there's glimpses of that, and the script. It is all the script. Such a brilliantly written script. And so I was like, okay, but she's showing signs of intelligence here, bits and here and there. So why is she so gullible?
Mm.
It's because it's a self-preservation mode.
Sorry, please continue.
Bless you. It's a self-preservation mode. So I was like, for her need is home.
She's trying to find home in people.
She's trying to find a home in people, but she's also pushing it away, because if you remember when he tells her that, will you marry me? She almost laughs. Like, is that even a possibility? Just talking about it gives me goosebumps. So moving. Like, is that even a possibility? So she doesn't even take it seriously. But when it does happen, when it becomes real, she loses any sense of reason. Even when her friend says, like, can you just think, like, take it slow? Like, you are going to be meeting a guy you've never met
before
in person. So she's like, yeah, but don't worry about it. I'm not going to die or something. She laughs it off. So for her, it was home. And that's why in the end, when she gets to know that he's killed all these many people, she's heartbroken. She's heartbroken. So that was, and I remember getting a lot of messages after it. They're like, when people would follow me through the tags to my Instagram page, and like, oh my God, she's nothing like you. People had also written things like, I came here to see if you were dead or not. I'm like, it's a character. But people do, and that's the magic of storytelling, right? That people believe what they're watching. If you do it well, they believe it, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Which brings me to another question. How do you choose your characters?
I don't think I'm in a position to choose at the moment. I don't think any actor, like, I think it's only really the top of the top of the top people who really get to choose their characters.
I love this honesty.
Yeah, like really, like I think it's only the Shah Rukh Khans and the Salman Khans and the Alia Bhatts that get to choose. You come a little lower, and you're just doing what is offered to you. And then when you come a little lower, then you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I have work. So, but there are some, like, I know what I wouldn't choose. Mm-hmm. That I know.
What would you not choose?
Propaganda films. I wouldn't choose films that dehumanize another community. I would not choose films that reiterate the same old concept of things like a woman should be a cook, a woman should be taking care of home. If it's her choice, then fair enough. But this is the right kind of woman, and things like Dusky is ugly, And like, because there are a couple of reasons for it. I don't want a 15-year-old girl sitting in a small town of Bhopal or Lucknow thinking that's what I am, because that's what I grew up with. I did not see faces like mine on screen. I did not. There was one off like a Smita Patil, or and if there were faces like me, they were doing really disempowered characters like maid, chodi hui aurat, battered woman, disempowered woman, or a woman who knew that there was no good in her life because her currency was to be fair and have European features and light eyes. And so I really grew up. So earlier, before we started the podcast, when you said you have such beautiful or perfect features, like I did not grow up believing that. And it's so heartbreaking because like up until my late 20s, I just couldn't look into the mirror and like myself because of the brainwashing of the songs, of the ads, of the movies, of people around me, my teachers, my parents. And what it does to women is very heartbreaking. And then to heal out of it is another work. And so I wouldn't do those things. That I'm very clear about.
Is it changing now, this perception? Because I do see a lot of women with very different skin tones now.
Yeah.
And not all of them doing disempowered roles.
You know, I know Bollywood likes to take credit for it, but it's Instagram that has done that.
Okay.
Instagram has suddenly made, and I see the change play through me, in the sense that I still remember when I started my career, I would not like initially when you start your career and you don't come from Bombay or you don't come from the industry, you just go for every audition that is happening, which are called open auditions, and you sit for 3 hours, and then they would see me if it was a Pons or if it was some Fair and Lovely or whatever, and they would say, "Par aap gore nahi ho." And I remember a casting director once saying, and I was doing a short film and she was playing my mother in the film. And she said, Sanghmitra, you're a very good actor, and she took names of 2 other of my contemporaries who are doing really well now. And she said, you guys are really good actors, but you will not really make it because you're not beautiful. And I remember thinking, I was heartbroken, but I remember thinking, well, I'm here. I'm going to be here. Let's see, I'm on this journey. And I remember feeling very not angry, but like, you're going to be wrong one day. And I remember once getting a script which had you have stage directions, and it was written, "Despite being dusky, she's attractive," or something like that. I'm like, so, you get that. And I remember once I played a character and that's why you never do a film where the script is not ready, where the script was being written and the director came up to me and he's like, "I really wanted you to do this part and, you're perfect for it." And so I came on board, I signed the contract, I got my signing amount, and we started shooting, and he would write the dialogues on set. And he started writing dialogues which were things like where she likes a guy, there is a very pretty girl next to her and she likes a guy who doesn't like her back and something like that. And she says, "So you'll find someone else. Mera socho, mujhe to koi nahi milne wala." And things like that. And I remember coming back home and crying, and I'm like, I am failing myself. That I went into depression after doing that film, and I was like, why am I doing this? So up until recently, these things, they're still there. It is not fully changing, but I would give Instagram, and, Instagram has reached now, you have these from small villages, women making reels, and you see them and they're making makeup videos and, get ready with me videos. And you're like, that's a beautiful woman, So, and then when she has 1 million followers and people like, okay, if everybody's liking, then she must be beautiful. So I think Instagram has done more for giving women, acceptance for the different shapes of bodies and skin color and features and light eyes, dark eyes. I don't think Bollywood is still going there. Like, how many really top women do you see in our industry that are dusky?
Point.
Right?
Valid point.
Right? And they don't, because the people who are still making those movies are old men from the old times with the old status quo thinking, that they haven't changed their idea of beauty, or they are not upgrading their standard of beauty. I mean, even when I go out on dates, at times, I mean, it has changed a lot now, but I always have this fear, like, but I don't know if I should say this, but I have a fear of dating Indian men, because there's always this fear, because what is his standard of beauty? Because maybe he likes me now because everything is new, and then one day he turns around and he says, well, you're dusky, or you're not pretty, and will my fragile self, and I've come out of it, but it's like a tattoo. It is imprinted, those brainwashing thing, and then in my lowest moment I might get hurt by it. So I'm always testing, but no, it's quite different. It's much better, but not fully changed, but we are there.
We're getting there. Do you think with more women helming things are going to change?
Obviously, I mean, everywhere you put women in charge, and they empathize, and they bring their lived experience into policy making, selecting characters or writing characters. And if you, like, with Lapata Ladies, or Three of Us, or other films where you see male characters through female gaze, and you like those men, right? Because they're like, oh, they're so sensitive, and they see things in a more nuanced way, and they're more respectful. You can just tell when you read a character, when you watch a character, that this is written by a woman.
Yeah, that's what happens with K-dramas. On a complete aside, all the men are so nice and empathetic and caring and wonderful in K-dramas. And then in
K-dramas, yeah.
And then you'll hear that the men in Korea are downright assholes.
Yeah.
Sorry, you'd have to beep that out. Of all the characters you've done, which is the one that has stayed back in your mind for whatever reason? Whether you could do it well, or whether you struggled with it, or something about the character?
I mean, I still have those characters to play, but like, they'll come in the future. But there's one character that I did. It was for a short film which won the national award for best short film 2 years ago, where I play a mother who loses her 8-month-old baby in the film, while the story is on in the story. And her headspace was such a painful headspace to be in. It was so painful. I've never lost a child. I don't think I can even touch upon how that is. But the little closer that I got was so heartbreaking. And I remember coming out of it, and we had finished shooting a week before Diwali. So there were like a lot of these like card parties happening. And I remember going to a party every day to just get out of that headspace. So I remember that it was very exhilarating as well, but extremely painful. So I remember that character stays with me, that woman. Yeah.
Do you get into character? Are you a method actor? Are you a director's actor? Or are you an instinctive actor?
I think depending on the role, I'm not... I mean, method is whatever your method is, right? Whatever your method is, what I feel is the method. I think I go from more from a place of I will first think, okay, how would I feel if this had happened to me? Because in the end, I'm the medium. I'm the instrument through which this character plays itself out. So I will do all the research. I'll find all the political, what do you call it? Layers, sociological layers. I will, if it's a good script, most of the things are in the script itself. Otherwise, I will sit with the director and brainstorm it. And then I go with just the honesty of the emotion. Because in the end, emotions are universal. Right? And the more information I have about who she is, how she is, then I can bring those elements in. But in the end, it is instincts. Okay. It is being in the moment. It is like, but she's sad about this. How, like, sadness is sadness, and the costumes add to it, and the location adds to it, the external space adds to it, but in the end it's just honesty of the emotion. So I think I I always have this theory that if this is the character and this is me, then we both meet in the middle. I take a lot from my own life.
Okay.
And I will whenever I play characters, I will always find windows through which she's similar to me and start from there and hone on that. And the things that are different than me, I will find my motivations through understanding her better through the director or the writer who's written it. Where does she come from? Who was the inspiration? And a lot of times, if it's a character through a different kind of walk or something like that, then I'll think of someone I know like that.
Okay.
So that's my method.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Tell us about this podcast that you're coming up with.
I mean, I haven't really spoken about it, but it's called The Real Story, and it comes from my own need to find out how the people that I admire, why do they do the things they do with their art, what made them the way they are, and who they are as people, like about their human journey and their artistic journey and how that overlaps, and just everything they think and how does their mind work, and mostly about not the great things, not their hero's journey, but their human journey. It's about their human journey.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And is it going to be performers? Is it going to be creators? How is it?
I mean, initially, I want to play it a little safe and go with people that I admire, really, and I already have connection with, whose work I follow, and those people that I feel like, okay, I know them and I would like to know more about them. But eventually, it'll be everyone who lives an artistic way of life. It could be a scientist, it could be a sports person, it could be an author. Because I think you don't have to be an artist to be an artist. It's a way of life.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
All the very best for your podcast.
Thank you.
And all the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, really.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Completely.